our current demographic attract them, but also it is attractive to younger professionals. This moving to, basically a hip small town, and then I think that this is pretty much what we're saying. We're a hip small city that's on the waterfront and has the amenities, but it also has a place where you'd want to actually raise a child, and I think that also that's in the situation as well. I'm fully in support of it.
I think the harbor side too is just the next, we got stuck on waterfront. But harbor side really does describe people say, oh, okay, Charlotte Harbor, it gives more of a specific geographical feel to it than, even our vision, waterfront. We get stuck on words and we're not thinking that we're not being as descriptive as possible. So I think that's really taught us. And the main thing is that, we're going to have a leader, a manager to come in here and really take a hold of this. And I'm assured with the response that we've had on the way that we've gone about with Donna's help to get applicants into this position. It's over 100 people have applied. More than that?
Close to 130.
130 applications, and it's not even closed yet. That out of that pool of people, we will find the leader and the manager that we need. I mean, we've been bare bones for a long, I hate to revisit this every time, but, Howard and Howard's staff and Mikhail and, we've been bare bones here for quite a long time. And it's, it's time to get to the next level, and I feel like this is going to get us there. Nancy?
Well, that's what OCOM wanted us to do in the beginning, and so I applaud you all for getting on board and now that we're on that same page. I don't, I guess my question to Aqua is, what do millennials think of this hometown? Because it doesn't have zip, it doesn't have pizzazz or whatever. It just kind of, and
yeah. Well, as a marketing concept in communities, it is pretty hot right now, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's a warm word. It's probably warmer than community. But even if you look at Babcock Ranch, they squarely are aiming to bring a new community out of the ground. And that word is jumping around quite a bit in their communication. It was said earlier that, younger people are looking for those small towns and that's those smaller communities, and the concept of hometown is a very strong one from a marketing standpoint right now with residential. Yep.
okay.
I have one more comment.
Yes, go.
Quick comment. The harbor side, that's our foundation. As Rachel said, we're not a boating community. We happen to have a lot of boating community, particularly if you live west of 41 in PGI and BSI. We are definitely a boating community, but we're a lot more. We are soon to become the pickleball center of the United States of America. Yay. And that's going to be part of who we're going to be.
Hey.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
We could turn the sun into a pickleball on
There
that
you
logo.
go. Where I'm going with this is one reason why we need to maintain a relationship with Aqua in the future to keep us on track. We're going to be hiring a leader, but things are going to be changing. I don't know there's going to be something else besides pickleball that's also going to come into this community as we evolve. And we're making a great commitment. It's very exciting, the number of changes. It's not just pickleball. It's a number of other things that are changing in this community. And there's a reason why people got excited about, some young people got excited about when we were doing Gilchrist, that we needed to have more playground. And all of a sudden we're able to come up with these types of things. And we're going to have all these amenities. And we're not just Punta Gorda proper, we are the Punta Gorda service area. And so it's not all about tourism. It's going to have to be a much more broader, and we're going to need to have somebody to run roughshod over us to keep us on that focus, I believe. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Well, I also understand that, when you communicate, that you just don't throw out the logo alone. There are usually other things around it, so you're communicating more of the whole story.
Correct.
Or what the appeal can be.
Well, it's a very good point. So many times when we have these discussions, we get very centered on a logo or a tagline, realize there are elements in the overall communication. There's a lot more that's going to be expressed.
I just needed to be able to have discussion around this word, just to make sure, just to throw it out there so that, we could get more clarity around it. So thank you for the discussion.
Howard?
I did learn something from the conversation today. This is the first time I heard that the millenniums, the younger folks, think those of us in Punta Gorda are cool.
Some of them, some.
So, then that's what you said.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool. Like, I mean, I'm used to like Tokyo, real city, and I actually really like my life here. It's crazy to me.
That's because you're young.
Yes, and it's hip. It's a hip spot. It's cool.
But that's what happened in Leadership Charlotte. It's like all these young, when I was in Leadership Charlotte, and all the 20 and 30-somethings were saying, we used to go elsewhere to have fun, and they said, now all of our friends want to come here. So I think that this community has spent many years now building itself, and we set that direction in place, and it's been a community-wide effort. And so, and it is a journey. It's not, to which there is no end. It's going to be forever. So.
And I know what you're saying, like particularly when I first saw the logos, I had my favorite, and there were two that I did not like that were not selected, so.
Well, mine wasn't selected
it
either,
was
so.
hard to not go with your personal favorite, like, well, why didn't they agree with me on all of that? So it's a personal thing, but the overall picture is what we really have to grasp.
Madam Mayor, the agency's personal favorite wasn't selected either.
You had some good ones. I mean,
nor
there
was-
were a couple that I thought were really, really good. But this one, I think you morphed it a little bit in the beginning, and like what you said with the typeface, made it a little bit more historic than it initially looked. I think the words were one on top of the other. Yeah, so I think the research, did bear it out, and it does match really well with what the county has done. And like the county, our best side is outside. When you first hear it, it didn't. But now when those the people came that did the Facebook Live after Hurricane Irma, and we told them that, they lit right up with that. Oh, that's great. They were like, Dave came up with that. I was like, yeah, Aqua came up with that one. Yeah, that's a good one, because it really does capture something in a few words that it's not easy to do. Yeah. So I'm in favor of adopting the brand and the plan.
Why, I move for approval.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No, I won't
Okay,
oppose.
carried unanimously. Thank you.
Can I ask a question just out of curiosity? Sir,
Dave?
I would just out of curiosity, what do you think of the Florida's Harborside hip hometown? No, I'm asking the professional. I just.
Council, I would defer to your community.
Yes, and then we might get, like hip, like artificial hip. Hip replacement. We don't want to go with hip.
That could be us.
That could be funny.
Hip replacement capital. We do have some good orthopedic doctors in town, I will say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you. Okay, new business.
I hated my hometown.
New business, consideration of consolidation of planning commission and BZA.
I brought this forward because over the past couple of years, there has been a lot of transition among the members of both the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. I listened to Mr. Council and Mr. Barrage's statements earlier, and I think that we should proceed with asking both committees what their thoughts are on the process of possibly combining the committees. But we have had a couple of reasons. Number one, the Board of Zoning Appeals only meets 3 or 4 times a year, if that, most of the time. It's very difficult to recruit and maintain people on that committee for that reason, because by the time you get a meeting announcement, half the time you forget you're even on that committee because you don't meet that often. But secondly, there's just been an ongoing there's almost always an opening on that board because we can't get enough people to file their resumes with us to be on that committee. And I asked the city attorney a couple months ago if he would research whether legally we could do a combined committee for both Planning and Board of Zoning Appeals, and he did in fact opine that we could do that. So I just wanted to bring it up for a discussion item to see what anyone else thought about it. Having served on both of those committees, my personal feeling is that the effort could be combined into one committee. The question would be, how do you do it and when do you do it? And when Howard and I met the other day, we looked at both of the lists of the committees, and there's a number of positions that are, they're coming up on term limits in 2018. And so I thought this was a timely thing to put on the agenda right now, because if we're going to consider combining the committees, that this might be a good time to do it, rather than re-up on some of the terms that are going, they're coming up on term limits or they're coming up for renewal, that this would be an ideal time to take a look at it. Again, just a discussion item, not saying we're going to do anything, but I wanted to get everyone else's opinion about it.
I mean, I would like to hear from Karen, how many times have we have not been able to hold a BZA meeting? And then the other thing I would like to say is that, you know, going back to Carolyn Freeland, her charge was the Citizens Academy that she put together, and in that, trying to recruit people to be on our board. So we did all this recruiting and we did all this, you know, come see what the city's about, please volunteer, you know, really made a concerted effort to get more people involved. That's where we were going, you know, previous to this, and now we're, so I want to hear, is there a legitimate problem with having a quorum on BZA or either one of those committees?
No, we don't have quorum issues with the Board of Zoning Appeals or the Planning Commission. It is true that the Board of Zoning Appeals meets rather infrequently. They go in spurts. Sometimes they have, you know, agenda items, sometimes they don't. I believe they only met 6 out of 12 times last year.
And that's
But the year before that, they met more than that. So it's you know, it depends on what's going on in the city. But no, we don't have problems filling those seats, and we don't have quorum issues with those boards. Planning Commission is actually a very popular board, and so is the Board of Zoning Appeals. So, and we do have we constantly have turnover with the board members. That's because life happens, and we have people who serve out their maximum terms. We have people who, you know, maybe it's a health issue, maybe it's something else. But yeah, we have constant turnover, but that's true for all of the boards, not just, you know, those two. So it's a constant challenge to keep the boards filled. We use the Citizens Academy folks as we send them a letter and ask them if they'd be interested in serving. It's a perfect timing to you know, keep them interested in what's going on in the city. So so that's mine.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, I would agree that asking the committees what they feel, how they feel about it. I looked at them, there's no overlap as far as participation on the committees. And it is an opportunity for 14 people to participate in our process. And we've done a lot to try to promote that. And so I think it helps our citizens have opportunities to engage with the city. So I would really hate to see that from that perspective go away, but I think if the committees felt that it made sense, I certainly would, you know, be absolutely willing to listen to what the committees had to say.
Yes.
I've just had a couple of casual conversations with a couple of participants in the Planning Commission, and they didn't seem it would be an overdue burden for them, obviously, to consolidate these two. As Lynn would point out, it would be something that would be very manageable. But I think out of respect, we really should just maybe pause for just a moment and ask the committees themselves to share their wisdom on what they want to go, and then consider it in that respect.
I concur.
Okay.
Okay.
You got it? Okay, next we have Peace River Wildlife Center sign request.
The Wildlife Center would like to put up thermometers for their campaign. The United Way signs go down in January when their campaign ends, and the Wildlife Center would like to put up 2 signs. The locations are,
I mean, I'm okay with it just because it's a one-time deal. I would not want to see this continual. And I know we're involved with the United Way quite heavily as a city organization, and that was kind of the justification for allowing them. Do you want to say anything? Okay. So, you know, all the support we can give to the Peace River Wildlife Center, I would be okay. As long as they don't, I mean, if it's that a real rendering of what they're trying to do, because I've noticed the United Way now has all kinds of logos all over it. As long as it's strictly, you know, but am I getting into content now? Can I say sans logos other than the Peace River Wildlife Center?
As long as you're not regulating it on that
I'm
basis,
not
but you're
regulating
just
it on,
suggesting.
I'm suggesting. I'm just suggesting, Nancy.
I'm all for the Peace River Wildlife Center and raising funds. I am against us allowing any nonprofit to put out signs like this. You know, I could request that the Pickleplex put signs out here like this and to raise money, and I wouldn't want to do that. And I just think that we're setting up precedent, and we're going to have all kinds of nonprofits asking us for permission to put out signs. I mean, I realize that we have a great partnership with the Peace River Wildlife Center.
Let me chime in before we go too far down this road. You know, there is a concern about opening up the right-of-way as a public forum for these messages, and then once we start choosing which message that we want to allow in the public forum, that's when we run afoul of the content neutral versus content restricted decision-making. And I would caution against creating further precedent, and would highly recommend that you encourage the Wildlife Center to allow for these signs on privately owned property. And maybe if we need to address something in our sign code that would make it easier to allow for that, if we don't already do so, that would be where to go. But I don't want to say anything that's going to throw a wet blanket on what the United Way is currently doing.
Right. Gary?
With one other exception. In this particular case, this is a case that sets it apart a little bit from pickleball, in as much as the pickleball facility is not going to be on city property. It's on. This is something that the city has obviously been involved in. It's on city property. We fought so hard for it. We almost lost it. They're doing great. They just need a little bit of help to get over it. If there was a way that we could, without setting a precedent, because I could see, which is another organization I'm deeply involved in, the VAT could turn around and say want the same type of.
On the history part.
And then the history part, yeah, exactly. And I have to be very cognizant of that, but I am so skewed towards the Peace River Wildlife Center that I'm not going to, I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to vote against it, okay? Even if I fully appreciate the points you're making here. But I understand that, and there's some other organizations that, like I said, that could come forward to this.
Well, that's why it's easy for me to be the bad guy.
I know, and we need that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the location could be considered. Jahan and then Lynn.
What happened if our precedent would be for capital campaigns, let's say, that are like $2 million or more, that in terms of our precedent, because that would incorporate this and United Way. Or, because, I mean, I don't know, I'm just throwing something out there, that's one way to limit this without limiting it, is that our precedent, if our precedent was for organizations that were doing major capital fundraising as opposed to regular general fundraising.
We had a brief discussion before the commencement of the meeting regarding what's going to happen, what's coming up at the University of Florida regarding, I guess, a speech by a member of the American Nazi
Yes.
Party. And let's suppose that they had a capital campaign to raise $2 million. You know, it's a very slippery slope.
Then probably what you're saying, then maybe the sign thing on private land where we would
I think,
make it.
I think we will be on safer grounds to have it on private property. And I know that our planning director is here that's gonna.
Our zoning official.
Lisa Hannon, zoning official for the city of Punta Gorda. We do have a prohibition for off-premise signage. I'll defer to the city attorney, though, on the definition when it comes to off-premise signage is prohibited when you're advertising a business or a use not on that business's property.
And that's true, but that would be a little bit more manageable if we provided some sort of content-neutral regulations as it relates to the use of private property for fundraising campaigns, and limit it to something like that, even though still the Nazi Party could prevail upon some property owner to allow them to do that. At least it takes us a little bit out of the loop in that.
That was a wet blanket.
I know. But to be honest with you, there's more of a chance of us getting sued over something like that than what we just discussed today regarding the Veterans Memorial.
I see both sides of it. I agree with Nancy to the extent that I think it's a bad precedent to set. I would consider allowing them to put one of those signs at the Peace River Wildlife Center outside of it, in the park someplace. Maybe that's a happy medium. I'm absolutely 1,000,000% supporter of the Wildlife Center. They know I've been in there more times than they probably ever want to see me, but you know, I'm all for getting them on board and getting the building built and giving them their home that they need and getting all the dust settled around all of that. I just really, you know, we don't need any negative controversy in the city right now. We really don't. We need to move the city forward. And I think that's just a really bad precedent to start, because you are going to have, you know, you could go to Octagon, you could go to AWL, you could go to the pickleball group, any other group that's looking for a fundraising campaign, and they could all come to us with the same request. I just think it's going to be a big problem if we start it.
Yes.
I think, though, that there's another unique aspect to this particular project, because this is a project that we are jointly involved in the redevelopment of a city property in Ponce Park. And they have put some money up front, so to speak, even though it's donated money. In the engineering aspect, there's been a large subsidy to what the city's responsibility would have been in the redevelopment of this park in conjunction with the Peace River. So there may be a unique partnership that I would like the council to consider that we may be in, if that could allow us to proceed to help them in this endeavor.
Yes.
Well, but, you know, I think somebody already mentioned the Punta Gorda Historical
Yeah,
Society.
yeah, they would be.
And we have just as much of a
Yes.
connection there, and they own buildings and, I mean, important structures in this, and they need funds desperately. You know, and as much as they need funds, I don't think that this is something that we want to start.
Just as importantly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just as importantly, if the sign were outside the Peace River Wildlife Center, people could walk in and hand them a check right there. You know, putting a sign out on 41, a lot of people don't even know where the Wildlife Center is. So getting the message to communicate of who they are and where they are could be a different issue too. I don't know.
I think
I'm
the
just-
locations are a problem.
Yeah.
If we could find a different solution with a location. What about, could we do it electronically? Could we incorporate them like into our weekly report, like
Oh, that's
monthly? You know what I mean? Like
When you say
first of the month,
electronically.
put their,
We don't allow electronic signs.
no, I meant digital communication. digital communication.
Sure, I mean, that's weekly report.
Yeah, maybe we could do it that way and try to, I mean, it wouldn't be to the general public, but reaches a lot of people.
Bear in mind, I've mentioned in the past that opening up our website, weekly report, et cetera, again, would open up the opportunity for others that the message you might not particularly want, but would have no ability to exclude.
Okay. Another wet blanket.
So maybe a new
Hey,
location with your
don't shoot the
consultation.
messenger, please.
Well, the other side of it is, we're talking about a facility that is in the city limits. A lot of these other organizations are not, other than the History Center.
Yeah.
So, that's the other side of the coin, and to that extent, I agree with Gary. So it's one of those,
Oh, I understand.
I just want to emphasize again, this wasn't a $10,000 help to the city that was offered. This was some serious dollars in this
get it.
case.
By the way, I don't have the authority to say you can't do it.
Right.
I understand
I've
that, I understand
discharged
that.
my authority to.
Yes, you have.
I'm just trying to throw your blanket in the dryer.
That's okay.
Okay? We have an ongoing, long-term, decades-long and decades-continuing partnership with the Peace River Wildlife Center. We have a joint investment into the same piece of property, and we're making, both of us, major commitments to improve that site in the very near future. That's the reason that they've come to this, that. It's also an incredible asset for everything else we just talked about while we're branding and what Punta Gorda is and so forth. I am very appreciative of the arguments that we've been discussing. I am just, again, going to state myself, I am so far.
Not be comfortable with.
Right.
So I think,
Okay, well, this isn't supposed to start until December 1st. Can we push this back to the next meeting and revisit it?
I mean, I think, like, I'm with Nancy now that the locations are a problem for me. So
I agree with
this
that.
and I would not be able to approve.
If we can find another place for them to,
How about in the county, how about on the county right away? How about that? I know a couple of places you can put up banners too that are not in the city.
As we're, are you still looking?
I might have two things
Okay.
that I found. We have signs exempt from permit requirements, any official or public notice or warning required by a valid and applicable federal, state, or local law, regulation, or ordinance by a public utility company or by order of a court of competent jurisdiction. No.
That doesn't apply.
And then we have non-commercial speech signs are permitted in lieu of commercial signs. But it's still in the right-of-way. And this is also I was just reminded it's an FDOT right-of-way, not a city right-of-way.
And so I don't think we can push that, no. So
Yep,
let's
DOT
try to come up with some other solution for the Peace River Wildlife Center.
It was David's close involvement.
Unless
Yeah.
somebody wants to make a motion, I don't know. Are we good?
Revisit it?
Yeah, I would like to
we're not-
revisit it, and David, ask you to please find out how to put the blanket in the dryer.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
do
we
my
can-
best.
Ally.
Well, are we,
I understand it.
Come up with some
I
other,
fully understand it.
We're gonna get to the other good part of this story in a little while too. Add some more money onto that, top of that thermometer.
So I'm hearing no to this location.
No to the
If they-
locations.
If the Wildlife Center wants to come back with a different location,
I have an
that's
idea.
not as problematic, we may or may not, we may bring it back to you, but right
Okay.
now, this is a no.
We're sorry.
yeah, oh, absolutely.
All right, next we have Economic Development Installment Payment Program discussion.
This will be real quick. We are putting together an ordinance, a resolution to allow, we would like to allow apartment development to qualify for the impact fee installment payment plan. We have one for affordable housing and commercial development. For whatever reason, we did not include apartment development way back when we started this. I think I know why. I was here at the time, probably because we had no apartment developments going on. Now we have a need, and it's an express need throughout not only Punta Gorda and Charlotte County, but all over. So we want to bring to you a resolution at the next council meeting.
Howard, I'm sorry, it needs to be an ordinance. I think that's what I put in my memo. That we need to modify the definitions in the ordinance.
And we'll do an ordinance. At the next council meeting, we will have an ordinance. Hopefully, we can get it advertised in time so that, and if that means that just that little thing can spur some apartment development, some really nice apartment developments in the city, then we've accomplished something.
Yeah, I've already drafted in my memo the language that needs to go in, so we can certainly bring it back as soon as the advertising will allow us to bring it forward.
Are there any issues with that?
Not at all. We need it badly.
There you go. So the last item is turning lane changes at Nesbit and Marion. If we could put up on the screen.
This came from a citizen, correct? I mean, have we heard from more than one on this?
The only one, and I've spoken to him personally about what he really wants. What he really wants is just to eliminate the parking spaces right there on the turn. I think he's asking for a lot to get a little. I don't think we have to really, the issue is not the turn lanes. The issue is that when the residents come out of the house there, they think that if the cars park here, that they can't see and that there's a chance for accidents. That's the issue.
Where?
So on Nesbit and Marion. So I think if we address those 4 spaces, we don't have to really go down this road, because this is a very problematic road, I think. This turn lane thing is a mess. But I'm talking to him personally. That's what he really wants.
Well, in my conversation, it was not, those were never mentioned. I've sat in the MPO meetings, and I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, it was more, I would like to be able to turn right on red. And which,
From the other side?
yes,
Yes.
yes. And FDOT came back and said, no, would not allow that. The resident has requested that at the corner of Nesbit and Red Esplanade, that we take the first parking space away. So that we're taking parking spaces away so people can see oncoming traffic. Because where we allow parking right up to the, and where they're coming out of the Harbor Walk condos,
Yes.
they can park right up to the driveway of the Harbor Walk condos, and they can't see, so they would like just to remove the parking space that's right there by the driveway of the Harbor Walk condos. So, but nothing was ever mentioned in conversation to take the parking spaces away that are over closer to the building that I can point to, but nobody else would be able to see it. That is on up at the top of the screen at the corner of Marion and Nesbit, and now it's gone. It's
Yeah,
Guardian.
we
where it
talked
says
about that
where it
before.
says Guardian reporting, that building.
Yeah, those spaces.
I don't understand why those parking spaces that are designated along Nesbit would even be in question.
I think we could stay with what you're saying, just Retta and Nesbit, I think is sufficient. I mean, I just, taking this turn, it's too important for too many people to, I think, to do anything with it. I think it's just really gonna create traffic problems that are unnecessary.
And as I looked at it, I understand the issue of 2 left turn lanes, people that are in that left one move over and don't pay attention, but they do that at Monaco, going out onto
They also
US
go up the
41.
one-way street.
Yeah,
They
they
do
do
it on
that,
a-
yeah, they do it
They do it
at
at Olympia and
Olympia
41.
and 41.
They do it everywhere,
Yeah.
so that's not new. And I think the Punta Gorda Police Department produced a report not that long ago that said that there really weren't any accidents because of it. Yeah, it's a nuisance when somebody doesn't pay attention and they do it, but that happens everywhere, so
I think we have, yeah, no.
Oh, we're.
Okay.
and we need parking spaces.
We already
so-
recommended months ago not to do anything, but again, it's come back, so it's in front of you.
I think we should just leave it.
Leave it.
I'm
I do
okay
too.
with leaving it.
Yeah.
I would agree. But I would like to be able to say something at the MPO meeting, which is next week.
Well, then we can say, let's go to the original issue, which was the parking space on Retta and Nesbit. I think that is reasonable to make that a no parking for people, so people can, so they'll be able to see.
It's not Retta. I think there was a mention of parking spaces along, if you can move this down Mitchell?
And the last time we talked about this, like
No,
Mitchell
no, the
said,
other way, other way.
we have that
Other way, keep
situation all
moving.
over the city.
Keep moving. Okay, so when you, right, stop for a second. So right there, yes, right there where you, the request was that we remove that first parking space so the people that are coming out of Retta can see.
Is it
Oncoming-
Retta or Harbor Walk condos?
I mean, that's,
Well, it's
well, it's
from the Harbor
both.
condos,
He's
yeah.
commented to me on both of these, that parking space right there, and then if you move on up, it comes out of the Harbor Walk condos, that first little space right there. It's hard to see the oncoming traffic coming up Nesbit.
May I caution us?
So,
We have really serious parking issues at Lashley Park.
I hear you.
When we start removing parking spaces, we're just gonna add to it.
And we have that situation all over the city. So if we start
Yeah, so we just say
another
that
precedent,
we've
if
talked
we
about it.
start another precedent.
I'm
I
just,
have this situation in
I'm-
my driveway.
I'm only just communicating what I,
Yes, yes.
so,
I understand.
So we discussed it.
Yes, and I think the turn lane, we're never gonna stop the people that do what,
well,
you know,
right.
and I'm assuming no right on red is because of the two turn lanes, right? So,
I would say also, it's not like Marion, where quite often there are people parked on Marion and they're coming more at a higher rate of speed. Hopefully, they're not coming up at that high rate of speed up Nesbit. And so, and we don't have full parking there all the time, so.
are we okay,
Yeah.
Lynn?
Just a couple quick comments. The Nesbit situation that was on the agenda was to turn the right lane into a straight-through lane and not a left turn lane.
Yes.
If we made the left turn lane, the center lane that's the left turn lane, the only way to turn left, there's gonna be a massive traffic backup on Nesbit and possibly Olympia, because especially in season, if you ever try to go to the post office, it's impossible. So I would not be in favor of doing that. And secondly, could we consider, and I'll ask the city engineer, could we consider putting a double yellow line on Marion from Nesbit down to the post office? Is that something we could consider so that it
Well, it
stops?
would need to be white, first of all, because it's between two lanes of travel in the same direction. And it's DOT's roadway, so we'd have to go with them.
I mean, the problem
They're
for me.
gonna have some issues with that. There's a weave maneuver needed if you're coming out Nesbit, you're leaving the park and you're coming to Marion Avenue. If you don't want to go north on 41, you need to get all the way across the road to the far lane. So there's a lot of movement in there that we need to consider
Right, but
rather than just one.
The citizen letter that we got about this situation basically was complaining about the fact that when you are in the correct lane to turn left, that the left turn lane is crossing over and cutting them off in front of the post office. That was why I asked that question.
Yes, it's a common complaint, but the accident history doesn't back it up. There's been 4 reports of that, of 15 recent accidents. They're running the red light, hitting parked cars, all kinds of things that aren't related to that, as just general problems that you have at intersections. But it doesn't stand out. We're supposed to look at a situation if we find 5 or more of the same thing per year as something that's correctable, and 2 a year, it's not even coming close to that, and this is a very busy intersection, so.
Okay, then we leave it the same.
I say it's
It's a
fine.
no-brainer.
Okay,
Yep. Good?
thank you. I have what I need, I think, for next week.
Okay.
Good to go.
For Gary, right, Gary? Okay.
Recommendations from city officers, city manager.
For whatever reason, when we, as a city council, approved the Restaurant Week banners for the Chambers event, we didn't include it as an annual event. It is an annual event. So they're requesting to put up the banners, same locations. They want to do it at the end of October because Restaurant Week starts in November. We have 0 issues with it because it was already approved last year. And I'm not asking the city attorney for any opinion on this.
Okay by me.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine.
Okay. We're good. Good to go.
City attorney.
It's a good thing he wasn't asking for an opinion, because I was getting ready, I was thinking about how I was going to address the next issue. and I'm going to be as brief as possible because I think I've exceeded my quota of words today.
Word quota?
I've given you a memorandum that sort of explains the process having to do with the Burt Harris Private Property Protection Act. I've had conversations with attorneys that are representing Grand Harbor, and I would describe this as sort of a salvo across our bow. In my discussion with one of the attorneys that filed the claim, I believe he may not have been aware of the Florida Supreme Court decision that I copied. You may have received a copy, which absolutely leaves no doubt that the Burt Harris Act that they filed a claim under does not apply to actions on adjoining properties that may have the effect of diminishing the value of the claimant's property. In order to nip this in the bud, I'm going to be doing what I'm required to do under the statute, and that is make a recommendation for settlement offer that would be presented by the city council back to the claimant. And one of the options that are provided for in the statute is that settlement offer contain the option that no changes to the action of the government entity be taken. In other words, you don't need to do anything with respect to the claim and to address or mitigate the alleged impact unless you choose to do so, and you can direct me otherwise after I bring this back before you. But I'm going to do that in time for the next city council meeting so that we can then do as quickly as possible what's required under the statute to respond to the claim.
So what is the response again? Read that.
The response is that we are going to make no change to the action of the government entity. No change in terms of allowing the Peace River Wildlife Center to be located on city property at Ponce Park.
Okay.
The other alternative would be if you want to buy them out, pay the damage claim that they're asking, but I doubt there's going to be much of a consensus for that. There may be some other thing that you might want to do in response, but I'm just suggesting that there's no validity to that claim under this act. You might decide to do something outside of the act, but that's your prerogative. That's all I have.
I think it's beyond ridiculous, but
I agree.
Well, we have to respond.
If it wasn't for two judicial decisions clearly on point, one being by the Florida Supreme Court, I might say, well, we have to deal with it and consider it. There's no process available to us to reject it out of hand. But the statute does allow us to tell them that we're not going to do anything to change our decision. So that's what we'll take.
And we do have to respond.
Yeah, we have 150 days to respond, but
Okay.
might as well go ahead and get it out of the works.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds good.
I'm fine with that.
yes.
That's it?
That's it.
City clerk.
Yeah, before I talk about the December meeting dates, I want to correct something I said about the Board of Zoning Appeals. They actually have met more than 50% of the time, not this current year, so I meant last fiscal year, but it's this current calendar year. Last year, the Board of Zoning Appeals only met twice for the entire year, and then the year before that. So I thought maybe it would be helpful to you when you reconsider this matter with the board's input to have some more concrete information about, how many times the board's met and what turnover we've experienced with the members. So,
Can you make that information available to the other committees so that they
Absolutely.
are aware? Because perhaps the Planning Commission members might not be aware of the infrequency that the Board of Zoning Appeals might meet. Just so that.
I will work with Urban Design when they bring those items to those
Okay.
committees and make sure they have that information.
Great.
Okay, thank you. With regard to the December meeting dates, I think it was when we rearranged the calendar for the summer break, And we didn't have that extra meeting because of the charter change allowing council to meet 22 times per year. And it was mentioned, well, maybe we can make use of that other day in December and have a break over the holidays. So staff needs to know whether or not you intend to do that for advertising for public hearings, just so that we know whether or not to schedule items for the December 20th meeting, or whether or not you would like a break over the holidays.
I think it makes sense. I mean, we may, have a long meeting in December and a longer meeting the 1st of January, but I think it would, even itself out, and we could see how the flow, if it disrupts any flow, then obviously we'll need to revisit it, but, I mean, the 20th is obviously really late in the holiday season, so,
I mean, we'll fill it up if
yeah,
if
you
want.
will fill it up. We know you will fill it up. That we don't doubt.
I was saying if it was up to the city manager, we'd probably have an extra meeting.
Yeah,
rather than
he'd
give
probably
you-
throw an extra one in there.
Could we consider having just one meeting right in the middle of the month on the 13th? Instead of the,
Well, we have CRA, usually the first meeting. I don't know if that would,
CRA would be held, if you did do that, that would be the first meeting of the month, and therefore CRA would be,
I don't know what
Of that.
that would, I mean, people are used to the first and third Wednesdays. I don't know. It's up. I think one meeting in December is fine, when we have it.
I don't care. I mean, I'm gonna be around, so whether we have one or two meetings, and if we're gonna jam-pack one meeting, I'd almost rather have two shorter meetings
Well, I
than
think if
would-
they know now, that's what they're trying to,
Yes, but I'm
smooth out the
just saying,
flow as much as they can.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll smooth it out like we did with August and September. We'll smooth it
That
out as
wasn't
best
so
as we
bad,
can,
yeah.
yeah.
well, I guess the question should be is, are all of us planning to be around all December anyway? So if it's not an inconvenience for us, then let's just have two meetings.
Do we have any idea this far in advance what we'd be looking at?
Our paralegal does, but she's up on the 3rd floor of the City Hall Annex right now.
Come on, run.
She would know.
I don't care either way.
I'm okay with just the one meeting in December. I mean, like I said, if it's too onerous and it, maybe we'll say we'll never do that again,
We can view ourselves as having a county commission meeting.
Yes.
What do we want to do?
I don't know.
I'm fine with just leaving it the way it is, but,
I am too.
I'm okay with two meetings. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay,
okay. Thank you.
yep.
Okay, we have boards and committees. I almost don't want to announce this one. For vacancies, we have a Board of Zoning Appeals alternate seat. It's just an alternate, though.
And the defense rests.
Okay, seriously, under vacancies, we do have an unexpired term for an alternate on the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have an unexpired term for an alternate on the Building Board. We have an unexpired term on the Utility Advisory Board, and we have 2 3-year terms on the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. Before I go any further, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I
you
just had
me for-
asked Karen about the term limits as far as the Historic Preservation Board, so do you want to fill everybody in, or?
When I looked at the ordinance simply states that members may be reappointed. However, the bylaws specify that the terms will be 3 years and that members may be reappointed for 2 terms. And I assume that the bylaws were written that way because that's the way the majority of the boards are handled. If someone fills an unexpired term, they can serve to the end of that term, and then sometimes they can be reappointed 2 more times for 2 full terms, or they can serve 3 full terms subsequent. So I think it was just to make it consistent. However, the ordinance just says that members may be reappointed.
So there's no limit on the ordinance to how many times they can be reappointed?
Correct.
on which,
And given the fact that the bylaws say may, that's not a restriction, in my opinion. That would be just, more or less informational, so.
Let me,
So I guess my question is, can these two people that have served the maximum 3 terms, can they go off and come back on?
Based on what I've heard, I don't even think it's necessary for them to go off. They can serve as many terms as you appoint them for.
Would they both be interested in staying on is the question.
This says have served the
or would they have
maximum
to
number
avoid?
of terms allowed.
That's what I think the city clerk's looking into.
okay, this reads appointments to fill any vacancy on the Historic Preservation Advisory Board shall be for the remainder of the unexpired term of office, such member to be eligible for appointment to 2 consecutive terms. So,
Does it specifically provide for term limits, though, in there? Stuff like that is to be liberally construed, so unless there's, a clear prohibition, I think it remains to the discretion of the city council as to whether or not they want.
actually, I believe that was in conflict with the ordinance.
Shall we come back
Can I,
for the next
just one
meeting
second
with
to
the-
look that
Yes,
up? I
because
can
these are
look
2
that up
good
fairly
members.
quickly.
If they would want to come back, I would, I would like them to come back if they want to.
yes.
They've been long-standing,
Right. And so, in my opinion, unless there was a specific prohibition regarding that, the language that's in the bylaws and the language in the ordinance seems to be more discretionary to provide for organizational purposes, but leave the door open to go beyond if that's what, in the absence of a prohibition, if that's what the city council would desire.
I'd like to go back and look at the ordinance. I believe that there are other discrepancies.
Karen and I can look at it and report back.
Okay.
at the next meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Since it is only the announcement of the vacancies anyway, we could find out from
That's
them if
correct.
they want to be nominated again, if they're allowed to be nominated again, and put them on the nomination list next time. But put it out in the meantime on the weekly report.
And those are our own imposed
Yes.
procedures, so we can
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Because in other instances, they would be allowed to go off and then come back.
My very first assignment as an attorney was to argue in court that shall can be may and may can be shall. Depends on whether or not there's a consequence for treating one as the other.
Right.
So that's what I'll be looking for.
We're going way back in your,
Way
in
back.
your,
We're going back to school.
in your
Wow.
career.
You got
at
the
this
Wayback
meeting.
Machine going today.
He's using it all today. Okay, so that'll be revisited.
Yes, Rocky.
Okay,
Thank
moving
you.
on.
We're gonna call him Rocky
By the
and
way,
Bullwinkle.
I won that argument, by the way.
Under nominations, we have a 2-year term on the firefighters pension board. We have 1 eligible applicant if you'd like to nominate and appoint.
Nominate and appoint.
I will
Second.
need a motion for that.
Motion to do so.
We have a motion to nominate and appoint Mr. Albers to the firefighters pension board. All in favor?
I seconded it,
Oh, you seconded it? Okay.
yes.
All in
I got
favor?
you the other way around, if that's okay.
Oh,
That
that's
you
fine.
spoke first, so.
I did?
All
Okay.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. And next we have the PGI Canal Advisory Committee.
Yes, we have, this is a 3-year term on the Punta Gorda Isles Canal Advisory Committee. We have 4 eligible applicants for this seat. For
Nominate
nomination.
all.
Thank you.
I
And
have
that's all I
que-
have, thank you.
I have a question about this one. One of the applicants works for a vendor who provides services to the canal. I just wondered, it's nothing to do with the individual at all. It's just, how do,
The Punta Gorda Isles Canal Advisory Committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, they do not vote on contracts with the city. They don't get involved in that process, so his being a,
well, they
you know, an
do actually
employee, he's not-
present, they do actually present to the committee, and I know in the Burnt Star Isles Canal Advisory Committee, they recently presented some information to the Burnt Star Isles Canal Advisory Committee, And, you know,
I
I
think
just
that
wanna-
if it
I don't believe
raised
they-
to the level of a potential conflict of interest, it would be handled at that time.
okay, okay. I just want to make sure that everything is okay. Okay.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Policy and legislation, I just have a couple of announcements. I'd like to thank the Punta Gorda Isle Civic Association. We put a call out to them to help them with our trick or treat, which will be coming up on Halloween, October 31st. The city employees, it's all volunteer, set up a really cool trick or treat focused on younger children from 5 to 7. But the adults ask for the candy too, so we do give adults candy. We don't deny anybody candy, especially with our great partners at the Civic Association, but we'll be here on Halloween. It's a Tuesday night from 5 to 7. I'd like to thank you all for donating candy. It's been, so far, very successful. Look for the giant gummy bear. I don't think you can miss it in the lobby of the Punta Gorda Isle Civic Association right now. The other thing is the tree lighting is Friday, December 1st, and it's going pretty well. We're gonna be meeting now. I mean, it's almost November. Our next meeting is in November, so we've got, time, we got a little bit of time before the big hurrah, but it's going very well. We have a pretty robust committee. We've gotten great support from the community on sponsorship, so it should be it's gonna be a crazy night because the car auction is at the event center, so we're gonna have to really get out there and let people know that park at the Harold Court Center, park in this parking lot. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of activity downtown on Friday, December 1st, so we're working on the logistics of that. The car auction presents a problem because they have their cars that they're selling in the event center parking lot. So that's full of the cars that they're auctioning. So they have rented the city marketplace property to use as their actual parking for the people visiting the auction. So we're gonna kind of be in tandem with the auction people on the city marketplace property. But Jerry Cleffy's been involved, and we've had site visits, and we've got Dave Myers and PD and Public Safety and all of that. And we're making a plan, and we are gonna be closing Marion Avenue at 2 o'clock, did we decide? So 2 o'clock, the streets will start to close. It's a public safety decision. Last year, we tried to wheedle it down to one lane on Marion, but the amount of pedestrians that we're gonna have